Good afternoon, one and all. I, on behalf of MIT University Rajasthan CRC, take the opportunity to welcome all of you along with our esteemed guests for today's session, that is Future Prospects in Corporate Law. As someone rightly said and quoted, passion is the difference between a job or having a career. I'm privileged to introduce our panel for today, Mr. Narayan Kedia. He is Principal Associate in Shardul Amarchand Mangaldas and Corporation. With experience of over 12 years in securities and investment laws, he has advised clients in various capital raising transactions comprising initial public offerings, qualified institution placement, right issues, public and private placement of debt. He has also advised clients on debt restructuring, takeover, and other security law aspects, private equity transactions, public mergers and acquisitions, among others. He has been associated with Shardul Amarchand Mangaldas, BMR Legal, J. Sagar Associate, among other associates. His work includes drafting and reviewing of all offer documents, formulating negotiations and finalizing transactions agreements, analyzing legal issues of the deal, structuring deal, legal due diligence of the target companies, coordinate with intermediaries, other legal advisors involved in the deal, and providing specific advice on request by the clients. We really heartily welcome you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Tejwani. Thank you very much.
And along with Mr. Narayan, we have Mr. Saswat Mohanty. Mr. Mohanty is currently the in-house counsel for India's largest stock exchange, National Stock Exchange, and he is also the CEO of Indian School of Law, Policy and Governance. Prior to this, he has been associated with Tier 1 law firms of the country such as CAM, SAM, Desai and Diwani as a senior associate. With around 7 years of experience in general corporate and capital markets, Mr. Mohanty has advised issuers, investment banks, and investors on a wide variety of security offerings, including public offerings and private placement of equity-linked securities and debt securities, such as initial public offerings and following on public offerings, foreign currency, convertible bonds, issuance and restructuring, American depository receipts, listing, qualified institution placements, and right issues across a number of sectors. He has led several marquee deals over the years. We welcome you, Mr. Mohanty.
Thank you so much, sir.
So I am sure that this session is going to be a wonderful session for all the law aspirants. And we were also supposed to have Dr. Saroj Bora, who is the Director of Law School at MIT University, Rajasthan, for this panel. And she will be joining soon in this session. And I would request both the esteemed panelists to take it forward from here, starting from Mr. Narayan. Thank you. Over to you, sir.
Yeah, thank you, sir. So, hello, everyone. Firstly, I'm very humbled by the introduction given by Mr. Tejwani. And I would like to thank other esteemed faculty members of MIT University for giving us an opportunity to speak or guide the future legal minds on future of corporate laws. But before I speak my mind on future of corporate laws in India, I would like to just take some time of you guys on discussing the placements of law students in law firms and in-house job opportunities and corporate houses, right? So we are all aware, right? We are all aware of the placement success of national law schools. When we say, when we talk about NLS, NALSAR, their placements are quite good, right? If you do a general research, you will find majority of students from a batch in National Law School will either end up joining one of the Tier 1 law firms or will have an equally good in-house job opportunity, with very few of them who will end up considering different options. So what do you think is so different? Like, what is so different that top Tier 1 law firms end up picking bunch of students from few of these law schools? And that too, maybe I can say top 4 or 5 law schools, right? I don't think there's any difference. There's no difference between students, be it from any law school or college. For me, anyone who is hardworking, who is meritorious, they're all same for me. But there's something very important and the reason why I'm discussing this thing with you guys. But along with that one thing I always advise young people and anyone, my peers also, that guidance on right path is something which is very absolute or essential for any law student. And towards this, I can very well say that this first step of guidance on right path is something your esteemed faculty and college is already doing for you. The reason being that in addition to teaching you about law subjects, your college is also taking initiatives in organizing such webinars, wherein you all get the benefit of listening to the speakers, to the people, to the experience of people who have worked in the industry, right? So this is something very important. These webinars do help you, do give you a perspective about how to approach in life and to be very clear that what you exactly want to do. So in legal field, it's a general presumption that a kid from, as I mentioned earlier, from National Law School will be hardworking, knowledgeable. But in reality, in my experience of 12 years, I can say that having the opportunity to work in top tier 1 law firms, be it Shardul Amarchand, this is the #1 law firm in India, be it J. Sagar Associates, again in top 5, I have realized that this assumption is not entirely true. On the other hand, I had personally the best working experience with graduates who were not from national law schools. But what is, and that's why I can say this, because one thing I have realized from after working with so many people, what I have realized, what is most important, right? What is most important, what actually makes a difference is knowing or figuring out what you want to do, which area of law interests you, and where your focus should be directed. Now, knowing what you want to do is not easy as it sounds, but it is something which develops over time. And the way to do it is you have to keep yourself generally aware, updated about the news and developments in the market. And also there are like training workshops conducted by practitioners in their area of expertise, which a student can apply for to get an insight and learn about nuances of specific area of corporate laws. So once we inculcate this habit of keeping ourselves updated, then I think it will be a right step for you to figure out which area of corporate law actually excites you, or you are actually enthusiastic about. So from here, this was just a general guidance on what should be the approach, what should be your attitude as a law student, because most of us, and me myself, I had faced this when around a decade back when I was in law college. I used to read anything and everything and was not clear in head, right? Which direction to go. I knew that I don't want to do litigation and I want to join a corporate practice, maybe a law firm or in-house. But in that also, there are so many options, which you get to know once you join the law firm. And within today's market, so competitive that you as a law student, or maybe in your by 3rd year, 4th year, 5th year, you should start thinking about it, what exactly you want to do. And that's why this discussion, but from here, since we are here to discuss about future of corporate laws, so I would like to briefly discuss with you guys on various aspects of corporate laws and what the future hold for young graduates like you who choose to practice in corporate field. So now loosely, when we say corporate laws, right? Corporate laws is generally is any laws applicable to a corporation or a company. But in reality, its horizon is quite vast. It's quite vast and quite extensive. Because in this day and age, anything and everything you read in a financial newspaper. For instance, if you guys have read about Reliance Retail, okay, acquiring Future Group's business, wherein there's also a dispute with Amazon, or Reliance Industries doing rights issue of shares. Okay, these are all quite high valued transactions, and they get the most space in newspapers. So somewhere you must have come across if you're not read about it. So these transactions happened during COVID, but who do you think actually was the backbone of such transactions? Do you think it was Mr. Mukesh Ambani, or it was directors of Reliance, or any of the merchant bankers? No, they were not backbone. They definitely created an idea. They wanted such transactions to happen, but it is us corporate lawyers who are expected to execute those ideas. It is you who's expected to do those transactions. So in current times, any such activity you hear about or read in newspaper, is the result of pure result of hard work of corporate lawyers, nothing else. And if we talk about the growth in the corporate legal sector historically, the reliance on corporate lawyers or the growth changed entirely in last 30 years, I can say. The era of 90s was a milestone in Indian economy, and you must be aware of the liberalized remittance scheme and how the Indian economy was liberalized that time. It all created a demand for lawyers who could provide legal advice in a completely new terrain. This led to the growth of the actual corporate legal sector. With the growth in economy, and especially over last 2-3 decades, I can say the role of corporate lawyers in an Indian context has completely changed. Prior to the emergence of corporate legal sector, jobs available to graduating lawyers, were mostly assisting junior advocates who were paid little or nothing. Law was thus not always a viable option, a viable profession for students who were first generation lawyers. Like if I was born in the era of, or if I had graduated as a lawyer maybe in 80s or 90s, I may not have chosen law. And a lot of people used to do that, because I myself and Mr. Saswat Mohanty also, my co-speaker, we are all first generation lawyers. We do not have any family legal backing. Okay. So, and on the other hand, even today's date, I know a lot of people, like my friends in my legal circle, I know a lot of people who are practicing litigation. They opted for it only because someone in their family is a practitioner. So they had support backup in the family. And we can talk about the history, we can talk about evolution at length. It's a vast history. It has grown over 30 years and there have been many reforms. The regulators have become more proactive, and the Indian markets have evolved a lot over the last 30 years. So we can talk about it at length, but since I don't think we have enough time, and there will be positive time, because we have to discuss about the current times and we have to discuss about future. So we can't deal into history too much right now. But one thing I would request Mr. Tejwani and other faculty members, in case if you guys have any question, and this is I'm saying right now, and later also will say this, in case you guys have any questions, in case you guys want to discuss anything with us, you are free to reach out to both me and Saswat on the call. We would request the faculty members to share our contacts with you, and we'll be happy to help you and guide you. But right now we're going to give you general guidance on what exactly corporate laws are. So as on date, we are a developing nation, we have emerging markets, and we continue to stride towards becoming one of the most developed markets in the world, which makes the legal aspects of corporate culture now more relevant than ever. And that's why overwhelming majority of students from India's best legal institutions work in the corporate sector. These law school, when we talk about law school, national law school students, they end up actually choosing corporate law jobs over litigation. Only the reason being is it's a developing economy, and we are in demand. So as I've already said earlier, that corporate laws has various aspects under the garb of it, right? And it is not particularly focused towards any one area of expertise. And this is something important to know, because today, if I talk about corporate laws, you will, as a student, you would think, okay, corporate laws is something I want to do in life. But what exactly you want to do under corporate laws? Because corporate laws is a very wide area. And this is something very important to understand what all comes under the ambit of it. So there is something like mergers, acquisitions. You must have heard of those terms. If you guys have, maybe in your internship, during your internship, or maybe you must have heard it from someone, you must have come across these terms: mergers, acquisitions, private equity investments, capital markets, corporate litigations, in-house roles, like for in the corporate houses, insolvency, bankruptcy. These are all variety of areas under corporate laws. And each of this has to be discussed in detail. Right now, again, each of these is such a wide area. I cannot discuss in too much detail, but I can give you a fair idea about what each of these mean. Okay. So let's deal one by one with each of it, right? So mergers, when you say about mergers, right? What is merger? What are mergers? Mergers or acquisitions, in short, we say M&A transactions. So mergers involves the process of combining two companies into one. This is a layman understanding. It's a very general, very simple understanding. Two companies merged into one company. Now, what goal of combining two or more business? What is the idea? What is the goal? The goal of combining two or more business is to try and achieve synergy between the two companies, where the whole new entity is greater than the former two separate entities. Yeah. So such transactions typically basically between two business that are about the same size, normally between the same size or in the same sector, such transaction happens, such merger transaction happens in that scenario. And each of the companies recognize the advantage other company has to offer. Like in terms of increasing sales, because since you have merged as one entity, you're not competing with each other, first of all, right? Then you are focusing towards the same sales together. So your sales would increase, your efficiency would increase, your capability would increase. So these are the idea thoughts behind any companies or any two companies or in same sector merging with each other. Terms of mergers are always friendly, mostly friendly. You cannot have unfriendly sort of merger. When I say friendly means that I'm agreeable to the terms of yours, whatever you are offering me and whatever the other company is offering to me. So the terms are not always mutually agreed and viable for both the companies merging. Like if I have to mention some example regarding a merger, you must have heard of Vi as a brand right now, wherein Vodafone and Idea, okay, they have merged together a couple of years back, pursuant to a court of scheme. Now, why they merged? The reason behind the merger was the ever-growing presence of Reliance Jio, Mukesh Bhai, okay, and competition with Airtel. So it is something quite clear. It was on the cards that one day these entities have to merge. Even like in today's discussions also, like generally when we are discussing, we see OTT platform has grown. Okay, there's Netflix, there's Hotstar, there is ZEE5. There are a lot of OTT platforms. You guys must be definitely aware of it because most of the people were using OTT platforms for doing time pass during COVID. So these OTT platforms, they are also planning to merge at one point of time, maybe next year, maybe a couple of years down the line, because they want to grow together. They see the competition and there are many competitors in the field. So 2 or 3 would like to merge and control the market or maybe compete in the market in a better way, right? So mergers are normally done in such scenarios. Now we say acquisitions, right? We said mergers and acquisitions, right? So this is what we discussed was mergers. What are acquisitions? Acquisitions occur when one company buys into another company and folds it into its operations. Okay, when we say one company buys another company, what do you exactly mean? When we say one company buys another company or one company has acquired a majority stake in another company, what exactly that mean? All this basically means one simple thing, that one company has acquired shares of other company. In corporate field, when you guys read about, when you guys will read Companies Act, or you guys already know this concept, each company is represented by a share capital. Shares give you voting rights in a company, right? So when we say one company buys another company, they are not buying. When we say acquisition and when we say one company buys another company, it actually means one company is buying the shares, majority shares in another company, because of which the acquiring company can exercise control over the acquired company, right? So acquisition is very simple in terms of, see, concept wise, understanding wise, mergers, acquisitions, private equity investments, capital markets, concept wise, they are very simple. And our work has evolved around it because there's so many laws, there's so many agreements, there's so many discussions, there's so many negotiations has to happen. So that's why our work has taken such an importance in these scenarios. So coming back to acquisitions, right? We were discussing acquisition. Acquisition is simple when one company acquires the majority shares of the company. Sometimes now mergers, as I mentioned, are normally fairly friendly transactions wherein both the companies are agreeable to merge with each other. Acquisitions can, on the other hand, can be friendly and can be hostile too. Okay, depending on whether the company being acquired is actually agreeable to the terms of the company acquiring it. So I will give you examples and I will explain you why when we say hostile, what do you mean by hostile? I will come to it later. But I will give you example of, as I earlier also mentioned in the webinar, that Reliance Retail acquiring Future Group's retail business. What do you mean by that? That's a friendly acquisition because Reliance Retail wants to bolster its retail business, and Future Group, led by Kishore Biani, was in needs of funds because they were such debt heavy. They had so much loans in their books. If they would have not done this deal, they would have filed for bankruptcy earlier this year. And thanks to COVID, they should thank COVID because they survived this time and they got this much time to do this transaction and pay off their debts. So this transaction is still on the cards. It has not happened because of dispute with Amazon, but this has given enough time to Future Group to speak with their lenders, and they're already on the deal is already on the card. So lenders are also aware, okay, the money will come from Mukesh Bhai and this money will be paid to us. So otherwise these guys would have gone for bankruptcy. The reason for this deal was simple. Reliance wanted to bolster its retail business and Future Group wanted to pay off its debt. So both had some objective and both were agreeable to this acquisition. This is a friendly acquisition. But when we say hostile acquisitions, right? When we say hostile acquisitions, I told you hostile acquisitions is something wherein the company being acquired is not agreeable to the terms of acquisition or is not fine with the entity acquiring the target company. Now, the example of that is it happened last year, wherein Larsen & Toubro, L&T, acquired Mindtree Limited. That was a hostile acquisition. The management of Mindtree was not agreeable, was not fine with L&T acquiring Mindtree. So what L&T did, instead of negotiating with the management of Mindtree Limited, they went to the shareholders of Mindtree Limited, like public shareholders. Mindtree is a listed company. They went to the public shareholders and then they did open offer under SEBI regulations. They did open offer to public and they bought the public shareholding, because of which L&T's stake in the company went up to 60%, which is majority shareholding, right? That acquisition was hostile. That acquisition was not friendly, wherein one entity wanted to acquire the target company and target company management was not fine with the acquisition. But it is only one, in terms of hostile acquisition, I can say it is only one of those examples. In history, if you see, such acquisitions hostile acquisitions have not happened in the last 30 years. They used to happen prior to evolution of corporate law, maybe in 80s, 90s. That time it used to happen a lot, but then all it stopped in last 30 years. Now, this is a brief perspective idea behind what are mergers, acquisitions. I will also come to the next thing, which is private equity investments. This is also something which you guys, I think, hear on a regular basis. Okay, when you hear Byju's, for instance, okay, has raised series of funds. When you read that in newspaper, when you hear Byju's has raised series of funds, or when you hear any new startup has got so much investment and it has become a multi-million company now. Okay, this is generally we read in life. Okay, but what exactly happens there? These are all new companies. Okay, these are new startup companies, or these are any newly incorporated companies who are in need of cash, who are in need of funds. They need money to work, or they need money to grow. Okay, so then they are private equity funds. Funds basically mean they have a pool of money, and they invest that money into such companies like Byju's, for instance, I mentioned, right? So these are very plain vanilla terms, simple to understand. This is not something which is difficult as a concept, but yes, the nuances behind that, the nuances behind how to do an M&A transaction, how to do a private equity investment, how to do an acquisition of capital markets, which we'll discuss later, is something very wide. Okay, so whether it is an M&A deal or whether it is a private equity investment, there are a number of hours we spent as lawyers negotiating on the terms of the deal, finalizing the shareholders' agreements, conducting due diligence on the target company, ensuring all approvals from the regulators are in place. And these are the broad items which we normally do. Other than that, there are a lot of other actions involved in any private equity or M&A transaction. So just to elaborate on my previous point on how corporate sector has been ever evolving, and with that, the opportunity for us lawyers, I would also like to state certain facts, certain statistics. Okay, around 150. Okay, around 150 private equity transactions and merger and acquisitions happened in month of November 2020, which is during the COVID period. This is highest in terms of volume since November 2015. So you can see the growth trajectory in last 4 years. This year is still considered to be the best year for corporate legal sector. And like wherein COVID has definitely had an impact on the world economy. World economy generally was facing unforeseen challenges, right? But corporates never stopped. Corporates were ready to acquire, merge, or invest in startups, and they never took a pause. And when they never took a pause, we also as lawyers never took a pause. We were constantly working throughout this COVID period. So also one thing interesting to note, out of this 150 transactions I mentioned, around 90 transactions were in nature of private equity investments in startups. Why I'm stressing on this point? Because personally, I can say in last 2-3 years, I have seen a lot of startups, a lot of OTT platforms, for instance, like Netflix and all these. There are a lot of companies who have taken digital space. Okay, digital space is on boom, and because of which investments in such companies or investment in such startups has taken its importance. So the idea of telling you guys this, the history or this number is that the work for corporate lawyers or need for corporate lawyers and especially young fresh graduates is on the rise, irrespective whether it's COVID or not a COVID. This is something very important to know. I think there's some noise in the background I can hear. Yeah, sorry. So where was I? So I was saying, yeah. So I was basically saying, like a lot of people, lot of young graduates I know, they call me also asking, sir, whether you have any job opportunity, and we are quite stressed. We don't know what to do. This is COVID, and I don't think we'll get placed. We will get an opportunity to work in a law firm, or we'll get an opportunity to work in a corporate house. I tell them, sorry, you have enough space. If you are good, you know the law, you understand the concepts, you will get placed, because there is definite demand for you guys, and demand is on high than ever before. So don't think COVID could be the reason for you not getting placed. So that is separate thing. Now, other than obviously, like other than startups, there were the mainstream sectors like real estate and pharmaceuticals in particularly, like, yeah, they all did very great during COVID period. And other than private equity M&As, I would like to speak a lot on or more on capital markets, because capital markets is another area, is another area or another aspect of corporate law, which in itself is wide enough to have variety of transaction under it. Within capital market space, you will see initial public offerings, you will see rights issues, you will see qualified institutions placements, you will see debt offerings, you will see REITs, InvITs. There's a lot under capital market space. So that is another area in itself, which you guys should be aware of. Okay, capital markets are always seen as a reflection of economic health and growth of country. The Indian capital markets, particularly, truly reflect one of the fastest growing economies in the world. What is capital markets? So before going into capital markets, I would generally say there are three participants in ideal situation. There are three participants in capital markets. First is issuer or the company, I can say, who is planning to raise money from the public at large. Basically, the issuer of the company, what the issuer of the company or the company will do, they will issue securities to public at large or on private placement basis also to selected individual to raise funds, which in layman terms means that company will borrow money from public at large or a group of individuals by issuing securities to them. And securities are equity shares or debentures or units. It can be in any form. to the public, and public will give them money in return. Okay. Second in the category are the investors. The investors are the one who actually give money to the company, who deploy their cash, who deploy their savings by subscribing to the securities issued by the company. And third in category are the intermediaries. Intermediaries such as merchant bankers or brokers who would actually match the needs of the issuer or the company and the investors in return for a commission. So they're essentially the three categories of participants in the capital market space. Other than them, there are a lot of other people, a lot of other intermediaries who are involved. This is just to give you a fair idea about who all are primarily involved in capital market transactions. But again, I would come to the most important role in capital market transaction, in any capital market transaction I can say, is of a capital market lawyer. It is capital market lawyer who is expected to execute capital market transactions right from the beginning till the end. Capital market lawyer is expected to ensure compliance with all applicable laws. So the role, again, even in capital market transaction, is of prime. The lawyer's role in capital market transaction is of prime importance. Without us, the deal cannot happen. Capital market transaction will not happen, irrespective whether you have a company, whether you have an investor, whether you have any other intermediary. We are someone who I can say binds everything together, right from beginning till the end, right? Okay, just give me a second. Now, as I mentioned earlier, that within capital market space too, the structure of transactions, they differ. Okay. I hope you guys are getting what I'm saying. In case if you guys think, generally this is something which I tell people, in case you guys think something is you guys can't understand or something you are not able to figure out what exactly you are expected to do. This is something I can explain to you guys. You can shout out and you can reach to me later after the session also, for which I have already requested the faculty members to share our contacts. You guys can do that because I cannot pause right now. Again, we have 1 hour's time and we don't have too much time in hand. So I have to rush it through, but I will try my best to make sure that you guys understand the basic concepts. So within capital market scenario, which I mentioned earlier, the structure of transaction differs basis the type of issuance proposed by the company. Now, in case if the company is looking to list its shares on the stock exchanges, such company will be required to do initial public offering of its shares, or which is commonly known as IPO. Now, IPO is something which is very common terminology. It's just something anyone who is interested in stock market or whose dad, mom, brother, sister is interested in capital market or friends, they must have heard of this term called IPO. So it is nothing. It is IPO basically means the public at large, the public investors like you, me, and various other investors at large will have an opportunity to subscribe to the shares of such company who is proposing to do an IPO. And it is the IPO till date is the most active space in capital markets. Doing an IPO is something, if you have done a couple of IPOs, you would understand capital market transactions right from top to bottom, irrespective the nature of security, irrespective the nature of issuance is different. You will still get the idea of how capital market transactions happen and what is expected of you as a corporate lawyer, right? Now, so like IPO and like I mentioned IPO, there are other modes which I mentioned earlier also, like rights issues. When Reliance Industries did rights issue earlier last year actually in May, that is something that was a very big transaction in capital market space. Then there's something called qualified institutions placements. There's something called preferential allotments. There's something called REITs, InvITs, which I have mentioned earlier also. And each of it requires its own understanding. Like you have to understand what are rights issues. You have to understand what a qualified institution placement. Each of it has their own understanding, their own requirements prescribed under law. And I can't again deal into it each of those right now. But let's move on to the growth of Indian capital markets, right? Now, as far as growth of Indian capital market is concerned, we have seen various development over the years. And the regulator who basically regulates such capital market transaction is Securities and Exchange Board of India. the short form being SEBI. Okay, SEBI is something which is a commonly used term for Securities and Exchange Board of India, short form. SEBI has been constantly bringing in reforms, and especially in last 4-5 years, I can say, in the capital market sector, which actually has resulted in increasing the opportunities for the lawyers, corporate lawyers who are practicing capital markets, or even the future generations who want to practice capital markets. For instance, I can say that recently, this is a very interesting thing, and if it happens in Indian markets, it will be a boom for capital market lawyers, and there'll be no dearth of work. We will always be occupied, and we will get paid best in the market. I can say that. I can vouch for that. As a capital market lawyer, if the future plans of SEBI works out, and if they are implemented, then I don't think you have to think twice before thinking of choosing capital markets as an option or as a future area of law. So the recent change, what they have been discussing, is allowing direct listing of Indian corporates on foreign bourses or stock exchanges. Now, when we say direct listing of Indian corporates on foreign bourses or stock exchanges, what it means that an Indian company will be able to list its shares on NASDAQ, NYSE, Singapore Stock Exchange, all these stock exchanges in US, UK, Singapore. There are various jurisdictions, okay, because of which the corporates will have access to the funds lying abroad. In today's age and date, whatever, today's age also, the foreign investors do put in money, but then there'll be no restrictions as such. Wherein the restriction, like you have to comply with FDI limits, FII limits, then there are different concepts. Foreign investors will have direct access to such companies. Okay. On the other hand, also other thing which will happen pursuant to this is even foreign corporates will have access to Indian markets. Even foreign corporates like Facebook, Amazon, Apple, all these will want to get listed in India. And this discussion paper was issued last year, and it is a talk in the capital market circle that this will get implemented not in few years but in few months. And once this happens, the demand for lawyers, especially practicing or especially doing capital markets law, will increase. Okay, and obviously when there is money in the pocket, there's more money to distribute to the lawyers. So accordingly, yes, I can very well say their salaries and all will be a decent one. And anyways, capital market lawyers are very few in market. Like few in sense, not everyone can practice capital markets because it has different perspective, different sort of transactions and ideas, and for which you need to either do an internship in a capital markets field, or you need to do a training workshop with someone who's experienced in the capital market field, so that you get a fair idea about it. Otherwise, it's not something which anyone can practice. Now, moving on. Normally, okay. And other development I can say talk about moving on is when we say IPO. Okay, IPO, as I explained earlier, is normally where a company is looking to raise funds from public at large by way of issuing equity shares to such company to the public. However, SEBI has implemented regulations in recent years to add various other modes of raising money by allowing corporates in real estate or infrastructure sector to form trusts. Okay, basically such corporates who are engaged in real estate or infrastructure sector, they are allowed to form trusts, and such trusts are called REITs, like Real Estate Investment Trust, InvITs, like Infrastructure Investment Trust. Okay, wherein such trusts will issue units to the public at large, and they will raise funds from the public. So the idea is basically SEBI is constantly, okay, on regular basis adding modes and modalities, thereby allowing corporates to target fresh avenues of raising funds. So the idea, again, the intention behind telling you guys about these development is to just let you know that we are in a market where we are ever growing and we are evolving. Okay. So all such major reforms implemented over years clearly indicate the intent of the regulator, which is directed towards growth in the capital market sector. And as a matter of fact, like M&A's private equity investor, equity fundraising by listed companies in 2020 during the COVID period hit a record high. Okay, like it was one of the best years in capital market space, and uh, especially when we can say first 6 months, maybe from first 6 months of maybe between March to June, capital markets was dried up. There was no activity. There 4 prime months we lost. Still after that, this was one of the best years, right? This obviously the surge in equity capital markets was primarily also on account of a lot of liquidity injected into financial systems by banks, and even government is supporting it. So as like a lot of investors in the market, lawyers like us in the market, they're expecting that 2021 will be a stronger year. So yeah. So considering activities in M&A space in capital markets are ever increasing, as I said, in emerging markets like India, the need for law graduates like you practicing corporate laws is also constantly on the rise. And to support that, I can also give you a fair idea about how many lawyers are involved in one transaction. Now, if we say we talk about M&A transaction, or we talk about capital markets transaction, or we talk about private equity investment, okay, any such transaction we talk about, they're around 5 to 6 lawyers, okay, who would at least 5 to 6 lawyers who would be working on that one transaction. And trust me, there's only 1 or 2 seniors who would be leading the transaction. Rest all are either lawyers with 1 or 2 years of experience or freshers right out of law school. And considering the number of transactions happening in this space right now, the need for you lawyers is there. Okay. So the reason is just to tell you guys that there's no need to panic. There's no need to get unnerved regarding job opportunities. You guys are in demand. Okay. No, obviously, I have to rush a little bit. So other than M&As, capital markets, there are other ample opportunities. For instance, in corporate litigations, wherein you would be expected to handle company cases, you would be expected to handle fraud cases, you would be expected to handle operation mismanagement cases, various others. Okay. And some may choose even joining a corporate house, as I earlier mentioned. They are in-house roles for lawyers. Okay, so some may choose to join a corporate house instead of a law firm, or we typically call it in-house roles, wherein one would be required to ensure compliance with all applicable laws in relation to decisions of directors or activities of the company. Now, when I'm talking about in-house lawyers, and if you as a student is thinking of joining in-house, corporate law, understanding the basics of corporate laws, Companies Act, securities investment regulations is a must for you. It's a definite must for you, because you as an in-house lawyer would be the first in line who would be required to advise the directors, the promoters of the company, in case if they are proposing to do any capital market transaction, or if they are proposing to do any M&A transaction. So you as an in-house lawyer cannot say that, okay, I don't know about M&A, I know about capital markets. You cannot do that. You are expected to know about all the nuances of laws. Okay. Now, last but not the least, I have discussed about M&As, private equities, acquisitions, capital markets, corporate in-house roles. But the most important thing which has developed over recent years is IBC, or we call it Insolvency and Bankruptcy Court. Okay, there has been a growth. Okay, it's one of the most. It has become one of the most important aspects of corporate laws now. It is basically a bankruptcy law. There were quite a few bankruptcy laws in the past, but this IBC has consolidated all those laws and tried to cover, or tried to basically cover the loopholes in such bankruptcy laws, wherein any creditor or any lender to a company, with the company which has defaulted in repayment of loans, can file an application before tribunal for repayment of such loans. So this is again very wide area of law, and there has been an increased demand for lawyers in this area too. So each of the before mentioned aspects of corporate laws, each of them requires deep understanding of Companies Act, security investment laws, IBC laws, and various other laws. But I can say understanding of Companies Act is must for any corporate lawyer, considering Companies Act is a foundation of any area of corporate law you choose. So you have to ensure that your basics about Companies Act 2013 are quite clear, crystal clear. Okay. And I can tell from my experience, when I had figured, like in my times during college times, I thought that, okay, I want to join in a house, or I want to join law firm. I want to practice in corporate sector. The first thing I did was to pick up Companies Act in my third year itself, even though Companies Act was not part of my curriculum till fifth year, but I started reading it right from third year, because I realized this is the basics, and someone had told me this is a basic, this is a foundation of anything you want to do. So I would suggest the same to you guys, that please be focused on at least uh, uh, understanding the concepts of Companies Act. Okay. Now, one more thing. I think we're running out of time, and Saswat also has to speak on his bit. So I'll just quickly sum it up. And before I end, I would just like to say, when I started this session, okay, when I started this session, I told you guys to remember the most important thing is figuring out what area of law interests you. And to figure that out, one must be aware of different aspects of corporate laws, which I tried to summarize for you guys, like M&A, private equity and all. But each of this area, okay, requires experience, okay, requires you to understand the nuances of transactional work, okay, for which I normally suggest two approaches to students. Either choose your internship wisely. If you're interning in a firm, and you're liking that area of work, try and understand and ensure you have to be proactive. Your seniors, people giving you work in law firms, they will not do that for you. They will just give you a task to perform. It's your responsibility to be proactive and try and understand the whole transaction. Try to get into till the end of it, to the T, because then only you will understand, okay, this is how transaction happens. If you only do a part of it, you will finish that internship and you will forget about it. Writing it in your CV, or about internships, and writing about in your CV about what you have done during those internships doesn't help. You need to understand what exactly the transaction was. That is one thing, and which mostly, I can say 90% of time doesn't happen. During internship time, you do not end up getting the whole picture of a transaction. So second thing, what I normally advise student is to figure out the training workshops around such areas of law and join them, because such workshops will help you not only understand the law, but will also help you understand the nuances of a transaction, like what you mean by M&A transaction, what all agreements you are expected to do, what do you mean by capital markets transaction, what are the documents required to be filed in an IPO transaction. So, or join some training workshop, but you have to do it in your college time, because once you join a law firm, then your growth is entirely dependent on how much you know from past about that particular area of law. So towards this end, I can also say that, as I earlier mentioned, that you guys can reach out to me. You guys can reach out to Shashwat Mohanty in case you guys have any questions or any guidance you need from us. We are happy to help you. And with this, and I hope my whatever little bit guidance right now is helpful. And with this, I would like my co-speaker Saswat Mohanty to speak on other aspects of corporate laws.
Thank you, Narayan. I think we are really short on time now, so I'll try and make it as quick as possible. So guys, look, when I say future prospects in corporate law, there are primarily three places you can aim for. A law firm, a large corporate like a MNC or a bank or a venture capital fund, or a company like Reliance or Wipro or Adani, and numerous other companies which are there in the market. And lastly, you have corporate litigation, wherein you can either be part of a firm or you can work for an independent practitioner. Now, look, no matter where you join, let it be a firm, company, or a practitioner, there are two stages to it, okay, which you guys should keep in mind. One is the interview stage, and secondly, once you crack the interview, is when you join the firm and you grow within that firm, correct? So first, let's talk about the interview stage. Okay, now look, in order to enter into this field, there are a couple of ways you can go about it. You have college placements, you have internships, you have headhunters, and lastly, you have connections of your family and friends. So let's take each of them separately. Okay, so look, when it comes to college placements, I wouldn't pin too many hopes on it because not a great number of companies and firms come to colleges. And even those who do, they don't select a great number of students unless you're one of those top 2 or 3 national law schools, to be very honest. Now, coming to internships, there are many students who are under the assumption that in order to get a job, if I keep interning in one firm, I will get absorbed into that same firm by way of a PPO. Now, this notion is a thing of the past. Okay, this used to happen 10 years back. But nowadays, hiring of a fresher associate takes place on the basis of work requirement. Correct. And whether the fresher has a decent understanding, not a very deep level, in-depth understanding, which obviously you won't have, that will only come with experience, but a decent understanding of transactional work. Now, with multiple transactions going on at one point of time, seniors won't have the time to teach you the nuances of law. They don't have time for fresher associates. They'll give you work and it has to be done. So basically, it's high time students become self-reliant and start taking onus of their own future and start learning and working towards the ultimate professional goal which they have, which is of becoming a corporate lawyer. Now that takes care of your internships. Now we move on to headhunters. So headhunters are basically those to whom you send your CV and they look out for firms which are hiring and they let you know whether there are any vacancies or not. This method is the least effective when it comes to students because headhunters generally scout for lawyers with certain experience. They don't usually scout for fresh law school graduates. उसके बाद जो option है, which is the most tried and tested method as till date, is to ask your parents or your extended family and friends for help. Okay, there is a high possibility that your mother or father, they know some kind of, they would know some partner or in a firm, and he can give you an interview without too much of running around. Now, if a student exhausts all these above options, what they resort to in the end is basically directly writing tirelessly to various law firms and to check LinkedIn for vacancies. Okay, there is a chance that if luck favors you, you might even actually get a opening. Okay, so now look, all these options which I've suggested till now would lead you only to an interview. Now, in order to crack the interview, the ball is in your court. Right? Ab dekho, couple of things you should keep in mind while giving an interview is that the interviewer would have seen many students before you, not only on that very day, but generally through life. Now, look, between Narayan and me, we must have interviewed hundreds of students. And it is evident that all law students who have studied round about the same subjects. Okay, so what makes a CV interesting and gives it more of a competitive edge is the additional interest a student has taken in a particular subject. Okay, aisa nahi ki I have done 10,000 other activities in college and I'm an all-rounder. While recruiting, we see as to how focused a student is, how much effort he or she has put into growing in that specific area. Just give me a second. अब मान लो Amarchand से Narayan is taking your interview. Do you think he'll say that I see that you've studied companies at 2013 in college? Tell me, what does oppression and mismanagement? Or do you think he'll say that I see that you've taken an interest in corporate law or any other law of your fancy, and you did a training session which was not mandated by college? Okay, this is what will catch his eye. Okay, and he might ask you a couple of questions on this, like what are the new characteristics of the Companies Act and why was it brought into place, so on and so forth. Wherein you can talk about one-person companies, you can talk about corporate social responsibility, women directors, so on and so forth. So, as Narayan said, you need to focus in a specific direction and not be haphazard in your thoughts. Okay. ऐसा नहीं होना चाहिए कि हाँ मुझे ये भी करना है, वो भी करना है. It's one life, so let me try and work on every aspect of law. Okay, I think we've lost some connection. Yeah. So that's that. Now, Abman, you've cracked your interview and you join Amarchan. Once you join Amarchan, you will have no time to sit and learn the law. Okay, because you'll be put on a transaction immediately. अब अगर law already जानते हो, you wouldn't have to spend as much time as other freshers, which would give you a edge, right? So कोई भी सीनियर आपको ऐसा नहीं मिलेगा हुल से कि नहीं बेटा तुम पहले आओ, आराम से पढ़ो, समझो, फिर काम करो. Work will be given to you and you'll have to do it within the timeline which is specified. Now look, there are two things you can do once you're in a firm. Okay, interview ho gaya, once you're in a firm, two things. Either you know the law beforehand, so you can do a efficient job, or you can just sit there and do a copy paste job and ask your senior to scrutinize your work. Now you tell me who will grow over here, the person who has prior knowledge of the law, या फिर जो गधा मजदूरी वाला काम किया है without using his mind and without applying the law. It's obviously someone who has prior knowledge because they can grow much faster, right? Now, being from Amity Law School, Jaipur, you will compete with kids from national law schools and law schools from throughout India. But आज भी वो घिसा पिटा mentality है in some forms where they think that national law school के बच्चे they are God's gift to mankind. Okay, which is absolute rubbish. Because when it comes to a kid who is a fresher, they all end up doing the same kind of work. How a fresher does that work is what helps in his growth. Correct? Now, moving on from that, what are the pros and cons of working in the corporate field? Let it be anything, as Narayan said, let it be mergers, capital markets, insolvency. In the corporate law sector, what are the pros and cons? Let's start off with a con. The main con is that for the initial 2 to 3 years, your social life won't be great. Okay, you won't get a lot of time to spend with your family and friends because there is a lot of, and it's tremendous amounts of work. But yaad rakhna, initial years, it's a grind no matter what you do. Okay, let it be corporate work or let it be litigation, civil or criminal litigation also. Initial years, no matter which field, this is not just specific to law. Whatever you do in life, you have to put in maximum effort in your initial years. So your social life might for 2-3 years be slightly bad, but eventually it gets better. Now we come to the pros. When we talk about pros, there are several. I don't have time to discuss all of them, but let me just take you through main ones. Number one is it's insane amount of money. Okay, it's just great. Starting right out of law school, you see that much money, it just makes you happy. Okay, for litigation lawyers, it's a major struggle for quite a few years after graduation. But later on, even they kind of move on in life. But for corporate lawyers, once you land a decent job, it's just smooth sailing there on out. Okay, so many of you might say that no, Saswat, we don't want to work for money, we want to work for justice. That's why we entered law school. But remember, the justice part can be done agar khane ke liye tumhare paas bhi paisa ho. Okay, there will be no one who will come and give you a case if you yourself are starving, right? So keep that in mind when you're thinking about joining the corporate field. It's very good money. I can't stress on this enough. Secondly, you get to meet people from various industries, okay, which helps you widen your awareness regarding various types of businesses, like the details of various businesses. Today, we just know as to how we book a cab on Ola or Uber, right? But how does that entire procedure work, right? You get many ideas from that, with which you can start your own business sometime in life. Lastly, you become way more confident. Okay, as you start taking decisions and once you start leading transactions, your level of confidence professionally and on a personal level kind of boom. Okay, right? It's just great. There are many students. For example, me, I was extremely shy when I was in school, which I'm assuming is the case with many students as on date. But once you start working, once you start taking these calls and you start growing, your confidence increases. So my final word to you today would be that what you do in college would only help you get a good GPA, but that's it. That's where it stops. But practical knowledge and your understanding the nuances of the law, which isn't taught in law schools, is what helps kids get a good placement. Okay, and helps them in exponential growth in their career. So both together, if you culminate your college education and you have practical knowledge and understanding of law, then your growth has no bounds. So with that, I hope today's session was helpful. And as we said earlier, each student of Amity Law School Jaipur can reach out to Narayan or me, and we will definitely help and guide you as to how to help pave your future in becoming a well-renowned corporate lawyer. So if anyone has any queries, please go ahead.
Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. In fact, it was really a great session. Yeah. So there is one question from Manik Pani. How to make ourselves more employable? One second. Any suggested reading or courses or such thing to gain practical knowledge? So it is to the panelist. Anybody can answer.
Narayan, do you want to take it?
Yeah. See, say hi, Manik. This is exactly, I think, what we have been speaking about. It's not about you have to make yourself more employable. Okay, that is not what it is. Idea is you have to figure out what you want to do. Once you figure that out, okay, uh, automatically in the process, slowly and slowly, you will achieve or you will reach to the point where you would be doing or you will be employed at a place what you like. And yes, you can. There are courses. They are not in books. Okay, if you say you can go and pick up a book in market and read that and then you are employable, no, not that. You have, as I mentioned, either you when you're doing internships, okay, like let's come to internship and which Saswat also mentioned. When you do internship in law firms, either you ensure that you are understanding each and every nuance of the transaction and not only doing a bit of it. That will give you a fair idea about what exactly it is. That is something which you will carry not only in your CV but in your heart. When I say in your heart, it means that tomorrow or maybe year down the line, when you are in the firm in house, when someone is doing the transaction, you can say, yes, I have done this transaction or I have worked on a part of it during my internship time and I know how it happens. Not I'm saying each and every word of it, but a process. But the I don't know, like problem is or the fault is not only from your side, but also from the side of seniors or from the people who are in law firm. They don't give that much time. They will not sit with you. They will not guide you on the entire transaction, because actually we don't have that much time. We have quite a few transactions running, and for us, interns are just help. Okay, I am not one of those. I always took the initiative. I always took the opportunity to sit with kids, make them understand what they're doing. So, because for me, idea is two ways. If I tell you something, you will be able to give a better output. That's my idea of sitting with kids. And that, but normally internship doesn't happen that way. Yes, there are training workshops, which, like I can say, even me and Shashwat are also planning certain workshops around this, for which you guys can speak with us separately. You can either message us or reach us out on our Gmail IDs. We will guide you there. Yeah, WhatsApp also. We'll guide you about the training workshop, because training workshop is something which are created around the same idea, that if a kid is going to internship in a firm, he is not getting that opportunity to learn the nuances of the transaction, and that is something which we will try and ensure that you learn during the training workshop. So that is I think, as far as learning is concerned, employable is something totally in your hand, Manik.
No, I think Shubham also has the same question, is that once we do these courses, what are the chances of me getting a job? Now,
okay,
can I take that?
Yeah.
So, Shubham, look, जादू का छड़ी तो है नहीं कि हम बोल देंगे and you'll get a job. What we can do is we'll help you understand each and every aspect. Okay. Let it not be us also. If you choose whatever training program you choose, there's no one who can tell you that tum ye karo 100% tumhe naukri milega. If they're doing it, they're frauds. Okay. So what we can do is help you get trained and get knowledge. Now, how you build on that knowledge additionally is up to you, and it's also dependent on your skills in the interview as to how well it goes. There are various factors which play into it, but the core factor, your knowledge aspect, that I can guarantee you, if you're learning from us or anyone else. For us, I can say it because I'll be teaching it myself.
So,
it'll be extremely great.
So I will add to that, Saswat. Okay. I think Shubham and Manik and all the other students, that query of and that confirmation which you guys need, if I'm doing particular course and I will get a job employed, as Saswat rightly mentioned, that it is, and as I also said, it's in your hand. It's how your interview goes. But one thing I can tell you, and when I started earlier during the session, also I said, the guidance should be right, and your college has already taken that initiative. These courses are not something which are out there in the market as on date, or people have been giving such design courses. People are giving courses on security investment laws or on corporate companies act, but those are very basic courses to understand provisions of sections. When I'm saying about training workshop, I'm not talking about courses. Training workshops are separate, and I don't think anyone in the market has done that, or it is available to, or maybe it has reached out to all the students across. There are around 1,300 law colleges in India. This is not something available to all. This is something available to you guys. This is available to maybe a couple of other colleges, but this is not something which is available to an entire market right now. Okay, so you definitely have an advantage if you take. I can't say that you will get a job, but you will have a competitive edge over other kids or other students from other law schools who would be maybe looking for the same job. Or maybe it can happen. I'm not saying it will happen, but it can happen that you are interviewing for, maybe, just take example, Shardul Amachan, for instance, right? And there's some other kid from National Law School, and I have to hire someone for capital markets practice. And if I meet you and I ask you questions, okay, what do you understand from capital markets? Do you understand the process? What exactly you have to look into a particular document if I give it to you? Or if you have a fair bit of knowledge, or have a fair bit of idea at least, okay, this is how it has to be done, I will choose you over National Law School guy who has the best grades, because that person may not be aware of the processes and may not have the fair idea about it. So this is what such training workshops, and I will not call it course. Course is something which is right there in the market. Any course you can choose. But these training workshops which we are talking about are designed to the extent wherein not only about the subject you will understand, but you will put it into practical experience. And that is something I think is going to be of use to you guys. But in the end, getting a job or getting placed is totally how it goes in interview time, and how you can, like where you can also reach. Maybe totally depends on the requirement of the market also. Sometimes Shardul may say, okay, I don't want to pick up students from the open market, but then Shardul will not do that. Then maybe JSA will not do that. Maybe Trilegal will not do that. But there are many other firms who do go out in open market and students apply there. So your chances become better.
Yeah. So Rahulji, do we have 2 more minutes?
Yeah, please continue, sir.
Yeah, sir, very quick. One last question is there. Maybe in 15 seconds or 20 seconds, if you can answer that, so that I can go for a formal vote of thanks. Whether to go for an internship in a big law firm or anywhere else, like if you can quickly answer this.
See, I will take that, sir, and I will try and say 20 seconds. Internships definitely are must, and this is something which has been happening over years. Me myself has interned in quite a few places at a time when I was in college. They are definite must. Okay, it's not you should avoid internships. You should do internships, because of internship you also build contacts in the firm. It's not only about knowledge. Okay, but the courses give you the a deeper understanding of the subject and the area, which internships may not. Okay, and courses are not something which you will do over time all throughout 5 years. This is maybe you pick up a course, you will finish it in 30-45 days, maybe 2 months. But after that, when you have time, you should go for internship, because that is the place where you are going to showcase your knowledge. So you have to do that. But in pehle, if you are asking pehle kya karna chahiye, I would suggest pehle you should figure out your area of interest, pick up a right course, do that, like right training workshop, not course, in myself are using that term. Pick up a right training workshop model, learn from there, and then apply for internship, and then showcase your knowledge, and you will get a better chance to get placed in the respective places where you're interning.
So in that case, should the student look for top law firms for internship, or that was the question?
Anywhere. I'm saying any. Okay. So there are many corporate law firms in market. Okay. Top law firms don't have that much bandwidth. Okay, they have a bucket size. Okay, maybe in month of February they have 20 students bucket, wherein there will be students from law school. So you may not get the opportunity to work in a top law firm, but you should not get disappointed. You should, if there's some second chance or third option or fourth option or 20th option in the list, you should consider that. You should not leave that just because you didn't got the chance to work in the best law.
Great, sir. We have successfully come to an end of today's wonderful session that was on future prospects in corporate law. Believe me, it was really a great learning session for all the students community, and my sincere thanks to Mr. Narayan Kedia and Mr. Shashwat Mohanty for sparing their valuable time and enlightening all of us with their word of wisdom and positive thoughts. And thanks a lot to all the students, faculties of MIT Law School, staff for attending this session. My sincere thanks to Dr. Sodhi and entire IT team of MIT University for their support. Special thanks to Rahul Suriji. And, we have our visionary leader and Chancellor, Dr. Asim Chauhan, who always inspire us in getting the great learning from the corporates and the student community and the environment which we have created. And I would request both of you to come to MIT University, which is we believe is the best place to visit and interact with the students in Rajasthan. We welcome you to our wonderful, wonderful campus. Thanks to the law school director, Dr. Saroj Bora. She was supposed to be there, but because of, and she'll interact with you separately also. And she was there in one of the session. And thanks to all the entire faculty fraternity and all the students of MIT University Rajasthan for attending this session. And hope the students have learned a lot. And there were many pointers which I have written, but because of the shortage of time, I think that this is an eye opener for all these students. And with these words, I would request both of you to come to MIT University and interact in person also with the student community at large. And last but not the least, we are happy to share with all the participants that many of our students are undergoing internship with Mr. Saswat Mohanty and a team. And we wish to go in for more future relationship with both of you, sir. Thank you. Thanks a lot.